Hello, my name is Emily Beynon, and today I'd like to share with you some of the basic tips, the what, where and how of practicing. What? Whatever your level and regardless of how much time you have, I would always start a practice session with a warm-up. And I mean literally physically warming up your body to prevent strains and injury, to get blood flowing to your brain and to give you energy. Try just a few simple jumping jacks, jogging on the spot and some basic stretches. Also incorporated in the warm-up for me would definitely be a few minutes of breathing exercises to consciously switch from daily life breathing to flute playing breathing. And of course, some kind of mental focus exercise. If you'd like to try it, my body scan is a very simple way of combining breathing and focus, and it can easily be extended and intensified before a performance. I'll put a link up here to that video. Then divide the rest of your practice time into 3 equal sections. In the first block, you'll practice your tone exercises, articulation exercises and scales. Familiarity with your instrument and building and perfecting these skills will make learning pieces so much faster. I like to think of practicing these dry, technical exercises as being like building your skills library. Each book is a separate skill, and you need to make sure you know exactly where each of the books is and that it's clean and dusted and ready for use when the inspiration strikes you. And of course, you can always add books to your library. The wallpaper behind me is my daily reminder of this practicing philosophy. The second block is for studies. These are a sort of bridge between the dry technical exercises and the pieces, and are a really good way of keeping your practice fresh. Because unless you're preparing a study for an exam or maybe even for a concert, I would suggest a new study every week. If you're not quite finished with it, you can always come back to that study again in a few weeks if you want. The third block is of course for your pieces, your repertoire, your solo pieces, your orchestral parts, your ensemble music, whatever it is that you're working on at the moment. Again, whatever your level of ability or your ultimate goal with practicing, I would always encourage leaving 5 minutes at the end of your practicing day just for fun. Now, this can be playing through a piece that you particularly love, or maybe just free improvising and experimenting with sounds and funny fingerings, or perhaps playing along with a CD. Really, whatever gives you pleasure with your flute playing. It's just 5 minutes, so see it as your reward for having worked so conscientiously. Where? Where means space, of course, and by this word I actually mean 3 things. Firstly, the physical space, your practicing place. Secondly, space in your diary or time. And perhaps the most important of all, mental space or focus. In terms of physical space, ideally this is a place where you can work undisturbed and without distractions for your entire practice time. Make sure you have plenty of light and a good view out of a window perhaps, or a picture of a view on your wall. This will help you to get used to projecting and playing for the person at the back of the hall. And make sure that you keep everything you need for your practice close to hand. Your instrument, of course, your music, music stand, metronome, tuning machine, pencil, and my secret weapon, dice. But I'll come to that in a moment. I like to keep my practice place neat and tidy so that I don't get distracted by having to do lots of sorting out and tidying up before I can get down to work. And if possible, try and use the same room regularly so that you get used to your sound in that room. Regarding the space in your diary or making time, I would suggest you plan out your whole week of practice slots in advance. Whether you're a music student, a professional or an enthusiastic amateur, practicing regularly, ideally every day, is much more effective than cramming your week's work into the day before your lesson or a concert. When you're planning your practice slots, make sure that you allow for plenty of breaks. Your progress will be significantly improved and much more efficient if you give your brain the chance to refresh regularly. A well-known time management method is the Pomodoro method, 25 minutes of work followed by a 5-minute break. Personally, I adapt that to 15 minutes work and 2 minutes of stretching exercises. I like doing windmills or butterfly stretches, or just reaching up to the ceiling then down to my toes a few times. I find I can get too easily distracted if I leave my practice space, so I prefer to stay put, but just to put the flute down and move around a bit. Feel free to adapt the method to suit you and your needs, but do remember everyone needs to take a break. Now, while we're talking about time management, this might be a good moment to mention keeping a practice log. Most of the work we do as musicians is fairly long-term work, and if you're not careful, you might get easily disheartened if you feel as if you're not making progress as fast as you would like. So keep a regular practice log or diary of what exactly you've been working on, noting down any study numbers or which scales you've done or metronome marks you've got to and so on. If at any point you feel you're getting stuck and not making quite as much progress as you feel you ought to be, then maybe together with your teacher, take a look at your practice diary and exactly what you've been working on in recent weeks. Might there be a way you could use your time more effectively? If your work has been regular and focused, the answer will be in the practice log somewhere, and a small tweak of your time allocation might just be the answer. So how can we make sure that we use whatever time we have wisely? By making sure that we keep focused on what we're practicing and why. If you've ever experienced your mind getting distracted in a concert, maybe with some kind of unhelpful running commentary, have I practiced this enough?
I'm so nervous.
I shouldn't be playing
My
here.
legs are shaking.
This is the tricky bit. Who's that in the front row? Then it could well be because you're distracted when you're practicing. But keeping focused isn't that easy. Microsoft Canada did some research in 2015 and discovered that the average human attention span for repetitive actions is just 8 seconds. A goldfish has an attention span of 9 seconds. So give yourself clear, short goals so that you know exactly why you're repeating that bar or that line. What exactly are you aiming to improve? Make sure that you never fall into mindless repetition. With well-focused practice, you can greatly improve your progress and speed at which you learn pieces, whilst actually spending less time in the practice room. How? The how of practicing is even more important than the what. The first how is slowly and correctly. Now, when I was young and told to practice slowly, I felt almost as if I was being told that to spoil my fun. But let's examine how muscle memory works. If I play a new tricky run too fast, I'll inevitably make a few mistakes. So maybe I'll try it again and perhaps make the same mistakes or make other mistakes. Then perhaps I try it a third time, again, probably not 100% accurately. All because it's simply too fast and my fingers don't quite know where to go yet. Yes, on the fourth time I might miraculously get it right, but if I then move on to the next section, what will my fingers remember? Well, obviously not the right way, because I played it wrong 3 times as often as I'd played it right. So never play wrong notes, whatever the tempo. That's why we need to practice slowly. Our fingers don't have brains, so be patient and teach them the right path to take. Try to practice a passage 5 or maybe even 12 times correctly in a row at whatever tempo. But if you make a mistake, you have to go back to 1 again. This is a really good way to keep your focus when you're practicing slowly. And that's what I use my dice for. They do the counting of which repetition I'm on so that I can concentrate on the music and the skill that I'm teaching my fingers. My second how tip is make it fun. Instead of mindless repetition of scales, make a game out of them. Write down different characters, articulations and dynamics on little pieces of paper and put them in 3 cups. Then, for each scale, pick a random character, dynamic and articulation out of the cups. If you always practice your scales going through the cycle of fifths, then keep it fresh. Try practicing them chromatically. If you always practice them starting low and going up, then back down again, try starting them at the top and going down and then up. The more creative you can be with your practice, the more engaged your brain will be, and therefore the more efficient it will all be, with the bonus that it's more fun. Now let's go back to that tricky run that I hypothetically just practiced incorrectly. The reason I played it incorrectly is probably because there's a difficult link between 2 or maybe 3 notes. So my third how tip is to analyse the problem. Break it down and find that pesky combination of 2 or 3 notes which is catching you out. Play each pair of notes fast, then break it down into groups of 3 notes played fast. You're bound to come across the guilty pair or trio in there somewhere. The fourth how is why. Always know why you're repeating a particular bar or line or movement. Never mindlessly repeat anything. Remember that concentration span of 8 seconds with repetitive actions. We have to keep our brain engaged. The fifth how tip is the game of opposites. If you have a staccato passage, practice it legato. If you have a piano passage, practice it forte. If you have a phrase in the high register, see what happens and what you can discover when you play it in the low register. So those were my what, where and how of basic practicing, and I hope you'll join me next time when I'll talk some more about practicing and give you some of my favourite tips. I hope you've enjoyed this. See you next time.